Today I'm talking about Shonda Rhimes writing advice, but before we get started, let me know what Shonda Rhimes project you really love and if any of those inspired you to write. Shonda Rhimes Masterclass is from 2017, I believe, so the information is nearly a decade old, so I did just try to include the information that I know could still be relevant to television today. Obviously, things have changed in the last 10 years, but not all advice expires. Firstly, I'm going to let you know that if you are coming from screenwriting, Shonda Rhimes herself, she says that there is not that much of a difference between writing for television and writing for the screen, writing for movies, apart from the structure. Otherwise, you're just writing from character. And whether you have a background in writing or not, to teach yourself writing, you need to be watching shows that you love and enjoy, but also watching shows that you dislike so you know what you don't like and what you don't want to do. And then watch a lot of pilots and take notes, see what they do, learn from them, because that's going to be really helpful. Obviously, you can also pick up an instructional book, but Rhimes doesn't mention that. So even if you don't feel like reading a sort of textbook or a book on writing, you probably can be successful in your storytelling just by studying the stories that you like and dislike yourself. When you're developing a concept, first and foremost, know the difference between an idea and a premise. And a premise is a fleshed out idea. An idea is, what if I wrote a show about a detective? That's an idea. A premise is, what if I wrote a show about a detective whose OCD threatens his ability to solve the murder of his wife? Right? It's a little bit more fleshed out, more intriguing. And for bonus points, if you know what show that is, please leave it in the comments below. And if you don't know, let me know that you don't know and that you want to know. I'll let you know. And then I think you should go watch it because it is 8 beautiful seasons of just great episodic television, in my personal opinion. Rhimes also says, when developing the concept, it's important to know the who, what, when, where, and why. If you can't answer those questions along with what the central conflict and the character goals are, you probably have not developed your idea and premise far enough. Also, while developing, make sure you think about what you want the tone of the show to be. She also recommends just taking your time in this process and don't get hung up on names or the show title or anything like that. And remember, you need compelling characters doing compelling things in original ways. When researching, Rhimes advises, be careful not to copy other people's ideas. Take inspiration from, sure, but never copy. And then obviously you're going to be needing to, well, not necessarily obviously. If you're writing a show from a perspective that you do not know about, like a detective, for example, I don't know anything. I've never worked inside of a police department. I do not know any officers, any cops, any detectives, right? So you're gonna have to find those people and ask them questions. So real people, not necessarily just for people on the internet, people in real life, people who are currently at that job. And if you're writing from like maybe a different time period, people who might be retired or who have been on the force for a long time, so that they can tell you how things have changed. You know what I mean? And she says the best way to research something is to listen. It might be better than just asking questions or giving a direct interview for the first time around. So when you're asking these people for their time, let them know that, hey, it might be, 2 or 3 kind of interviews if that's okay. If they only have time for one, then you can maybe take that into consideration. But if they have time to, interview multiple times, or, you can, even if they do have time, even if they only have time for one, you can go ahead and interview that person. And then for the next person, you can come back with specific questions, because Shonda Rhimes, she says, if you go in expecting to hear what you think you know, then you might be asking the wrong questions, and you might not be, listening to their actual experiences, their actual things. You're gonna go in with a sort of bias, So once you just let the person talk about the job, then from there you can actually come up with like genuine or really good questions to then ask, because they've told you the real side of things, not the side that you think you know. To create more memorable characters, be sure to find something interesting and specific for them, right? So interesting and specific, to go back to my last example, a detective who has OCD. That is interesting and specific. It's not just a detective, it's a detective with OCD. Specific, interesting. Especially when we're talking about his disability, his OCD threatening the possibility of him solving his wife's murder. Rhimes also says that something that can keep you from making cliche characters is to take half of the characters you are going to make men and make them women. And she also says that this can work for other aspects like race as well. It just, automatically makes you think in different ways. It creates different dynamics, and you can avoid things being as cliche or just cliche in general. Now, this next piece of advice kind of comes in the writing process. Yes, it can come from like pre-production as well, like you're still in the developing phases of creating these characters. But she says when you're writing character descriptions, to write them about the world of the character, not how they look. Because, she says, how could you possibly know what they look like? They haven't been casted yet, and you don't necessarily want to get attached to a certain kind of look, because then you might end up passing on an actor or an actress that is actually maybe more perfect for that role, or has better acting skills. So more about the world of the character rather than, the appearance of them, or what exactly they look like, whether they have straight hair or they have curly hair, things like that, and even maybe race. It might not be necessary. Sometimes race definitely is important to the story, so sure, that might be important, but maybe for supporting characters it might not actually be important, so you want to keep those things open. Also, when you're creating characters, make sure they're active and not passive. Make sure your characters are happening to things and not the other way around, and things are just happening to your character and they're reacting to the things that are happening to them. Make sure that they're actually progressing the story along. That is going to go a long way in your story. Lastly, make sure your character evolution and arcs feel very realistic and natural. Alrighty, on to writing your script. So for 1 hour drama, Shonda Rhimes says that there are 5 acts. This is something that I really am not sure if this has changed at all, if there are extra acts or less acts based off of how television has evolved. I don't watch a lot of TV, I watch a little bit, and I don't really study television that much. I'm more into movies. That's what I study. So as far as television goes, Shonda Rhimes, she says 5 acts and around 55 pages. In Act 1, you introduce your characters and world in an exciting way and present your problem, right? Which is the conflict. In Act 2, you step things up, you escalate the plot, you expand the world, and you meet more people. In Act 3, you escalate even further, and things should be taking turns. So I believe that would be the reversals. And then in Act 4, there's a ticking clock. Characters reveal themselves, like who they really are. And then in Act 5, characters hit a moment of victory, which is a solved conflict. And then in every act, you want to remember to end it excitingly. Now to the last section, pitching your show. First off, prepare small talk and a couple facts about yourself. And you need to do that because you need to be prepared to break the ice. You don't want to be awkward. And if you have things already prepared, it goes more easily. And then Shonda Rhimes says what she does is prepare compliments. So she gets ready to compliment their shoes or something like that, their outfit, just to break the ice. When pitching, start off with the premise, then tell them what the world is, introduce characters, then the plot, then the tone, then the drama, and finally, how many possible episodes there could be. You need to know all of the details of your show, but be careful not to give every single detail in your pitch because you're gonna overload them with information. You need to save some of the details for the questions that they have afterwards. So find that balance. And something that Rhymes says is really important whilst pitching is being a good storyteller, which I hope is easy as you are a writer, but be a good storyteller, all right? Be a good storyteller, okay? Talk in images as well so that they have something they can imagine. You know, talk in images, paint a picture for them, make sure that they can see the vision, you know? And then similarly to the piece of advice that Rhymes gave earlier about not describing the exact look of your character, she also recommends not pitching any actors because you don't know if the studio or network has a good relationship with the actors or if they can afford the actors. And same with music. Same thing. You don't know if the people listening to your pitch enjoy that type of music or if that kind of licensing is going to be too expensive and now they're thinking about that instead of your story. So don't get too specific in, again, the characters and the music. Don't pitch specific actors. Don't pitch specific songs. And that concludes my Shonda Rhimes Masterclass in minutes. I hope you found this information helpful. If so, let me know. And I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Till next time. Bye.